Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we're going to be talking about upskilling. And so I'm certain you've heard this word before, and I'm certain that you might have some idea of what it is, and you might even be thinking that you might even have incorporated it into some of your strategies and some of the things that you've done and are doing in your organization. But today we're going to really break this down, and we're going to talk a little bit more about upskilling and how to use upskilling to build an agile workforce. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Today we have got myself. I'm Lauren Winans. I am going to be your moderator as well as one of your panelists. We also have Rochelle joining us today from my team, Rochelle Schwint. She is our panelist that will be the expert on this topic. She is going to be much more knowledgeable than I am, but we are going to have a great dialogue today to share our insights and our feedback. Rochelle is our client relationship director and lead consultant here at Next Level Benefits HR Consulting. She's a former corporate HR professional like myself, and her expertise is in organizational development, learning and development, training, among many other areas of HR. Those are just scratching the surface. I myself am the CEO and principal HR consultant of Next Level Benefits HR Consulting. I'm a former corporate HR professional, and I've been very fortunate to speak at a variety of different organizations and conferences, as well as sharing my insights with several media outlets. So we are super excited today to talk to you not only about upskilling, but to share just a quick 90-second summary of what we do here at Next Level Benefits. So we are an HR consulting firm. We've been around for almost 6 years now. We support a variety of organizations, all sizes, all industries across the US. We work alongside your HR team as an extension of your team, typically in capacities such as interim talent, specialized project resources, and fractional support. Those are the ways that we help our clients to excel and accelerate their goals and their projects, and kind of just expand the bandwidth, so to speak. We are a team of former corporate HR professionals, so everyone you'd be interacting with at Next Level Benefits has sat in the same seats as you. So enough with the commentary here in the commercial. We'll move on to our discussion today. So we've entitled this "Level Up: How to Build an Agile Workforce Through Upskilling." So we're going to mainly focus on 3 particular areas today. We're going to focus on how to identify and close critical skill gaps with data-driven insights. We're also going to be covering how to leverage digital tools and learning platforms to personalize that upskilling journey for employees. And we're also going to talk through some real-world examples of companies that are boosting agility through those upskilling investments. And we'd be remiss without mentioning too that really, AI is really kind of pushing this conversation, forward and really accelerating the conversation, even more so than really any other catalyst here. So that is something that we'll probably, be touching on during our discussion today. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen so that we can hop right in and head to our first question. But first, Rochelle, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it, and can't wait to hear more about your insights today.
Thanks, Lauren. Glad to be here. Can't wait to get started.
Awesome. Well, let's just dive into this first question here. So what are the most significant skill gaps that organizations are facing today? And here, 2-part question: how can these data-driven insights help identify and address them? This, I think, is really going to get at the core of what we're going to talk about today. And so, really curious what your thoughts are as we kick things off.
So one of the things that has come up over and over again, not only in articles and research, but also my lived experience at the last workplace that I was at, which is a very high-tech workplace. Some of the biggest areas where those skill gaps happen is in the digital and cybersecurity spaces. There is a lot of opportunity for people to upskill into more intense roles, like from a help desk person to a system admin, from assistant system admin to business intelligence. Data analytics is the other one. There are a lot of non-technical people that struggle with data analytics.
Right.
There are software out there to help you with it, but you have to know the data that's going in it is the best data that you have and that you understand the outputs that come with it. So all of those things can be upskilled. There are areas where it might not be appropriate, and that's okay. But areas where you can, there's lots of advantages to doing upskilling. And the data driven insights that you can get through this is by doing skills analysis and gap analysis, which is slightly a different process.
Mhm.
Doing those things and tracking the skills of your employees, whether by self report or by using performance measures to track those items, or a combination thereof. That's the way to initiate that process to see where you're at in your workforce.
Yeah. And I think too, when I think about upskilling, it's a buzzword, right? It's something that we've heard before, and it's had other iterations
Yes.
in the years past. And when I think about it, I think about it as an opportunity to really kind of uh, provide like another tool in the toolkit, for an employee, really kind of expanding their existing skill set, if possible. That definition doesn't necessarily always translate from organization to organization. Some people have different views around what upskilling is, and is it a lot like reskilling? What are these different buzzwords kind of meaning? What does upskilling kind of mean to you?
So the definition of upskilling is the process of expanding and deepening. That those are key. An employee's existing skill set to improve performance in their current role and prepare them for greater responsibilities. So, one of the things that when we first started looking at this and started hearing this buzzword is, well, kind of sounds like cross training. That was a big buzzword a couple years ago, but there's some key differences with cross training and upskilling. Cross training generally refers to when you are trained in multiple functional areas at the same level that you're currently working so that you can cover for someone, vacation, leave, whatever the case may be. Whereas upskilling actually is not only a benefit to the employee because they could look at a promotion or even a slight move to a different department, like system admins and HRIS, and some of those related, maybe not so traditional moves, but the upskilling part sort of gives you that impression that there is some benefit to the employee, but the benefit to the employer is not having to post a bunch of ads and do a bunch of interviews if you have a formal program where people are looked at for other roles. If you
Mhm.
formalize the program, you will save so much revenue and money in your hiring cost and your training costs because everybody knows that it's very expensive to hire a new employee.
Right. And it can also be very expensive to, reduce, have a reduction in force to reduce your workforce footprint. And I think, this concept of upskilling has definitely gained traction in recent years, particularly over the last probably 18 to 24 months, because when we look at technology like AI, we do see some roles and job responsibilities shrinking a bit, perhaps being eliminated altogether. And over time, the goal would be to take those employees that might be within your existing organization who might not necessarily be 100% focused on certain responsibilities any longer, and find ways to leverage their skill set by expanding it slightly or greatly in some cases, and finding additional opportunity through them within your organization, instead of leading to some sort of layoff or reduction in force because of technology just kind of advancing at such a rapid pace. So yeah, there's opportunities for cost savings coming into an org, as well as kind of maintaining your workforce, kind of preventing that turnover, but also kind of reducing the risk that you might just have too many headcount to kind of really take people and really analyze what their skills truly are, to identify what those gaps are, and then to put the right program and curriculum in place to kind of help skill those individuals to get to other areas of the organization and maybe fill some other gaps that have always kind of been there. I mean, that's really the ideal situation, is that an organization can identify all of those gaps and plug all the holes with the existing people in the workforce.
Yes, it is a positive for mitigating risk, like you said, with WARN Act for reduction in force.
Yeah.
It also builds a, a relationship with the community because, as you know, when people get laid off, they immediately go to the various and sundry websites like Glassdoor and Reddit, and you lose credibility with your customers and your potential candidates going forward. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of positives to it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, when you think about some of these skill gaps and some of the data driven solutions that can help identify them, you'd mentioned data analytics is a big gap.
Hmm.
And even digital literacy in general, and even like some human skills, right? Soft skills, and ability to adapt and collaborate. Like these are all, I think, well-known gaps within an organization. Like for example, like even tech savvy organizations, they struggle sometimes to find people who can bridge insights into action.
Oh,
And
for sure.
there's so much, I think, some higher level, like low hanging fruit around, okay, what, anecdotally, what are our gaps, right? Those are kind of, can be, one or all of the things I just mentioned. But really, some really intense, like data driven diagnostics, maybe things like skills assessments and other types of workforce analytic metrics, can really dig into what's missing, right? What's specific to our organization? What skill set do we need, as the world evolves, as our company evolves, and as the workforce evolves? And that, I think, it's going to be really interesting to see how
I
how different
agree.
organizations interpret that, and then kind of create an action plan that helps them move forward and helps them to rise to the occasion here.
And upskilling goes hand in hand with skills based hiring because once you've defined the skills that are required for a job, then it makes all of the other processes that go along with it a lot more seamless and consistent.
Yeah. And actually, so that was one of my next questions for you is, how do you transition from like a traditional static job role to a more dynamic, like skilled based workforce model without disrupting productivity? Because that, I think, is probably one of the most, daunting aspects of all of this from an HR professional's point of view is, we live in this world right now where there's very specific, defined, traditional job titles, job roles, and job responsibilities. What does it mean to kind of go to this more dynamic skill-based workforce model? And then what does that mean to productivity as we're trying to transition and get there?
So, transitioning to that skills based workforce without disrupting productivity requires a project plan.
Yeah.
Um, and project plans should be time based, should have milestones, and you should have an end goal. What do you expect to get out of this? So you need to define whether your goal is to utilize this for upskilling, skills based hiring, promotions, transfers, all of those things, some combination thereof, whether it's a staged approach, whether it's a all or nothing, whether it's in conjunction with getting new software that has that capability in it. You still have to map all the data and you still have to get all the data in, regardless of what system you're going to use. I have done it years ago in Excel. I have done it in more modern systems, but you have to. Basically it's the old adage of, you know, data in, data out. It's got to be good data coming in. So, in order to do that, you're talking job analysis. What are the skills you really need? Not what the manager thinks, because they think, well, everybody should have an A&P license for an aviation mechanic, um, or everybody should have a college degree for an accounting clerk role. When we know that that isn't the case, So, a real independent job analysis, a project plan, timeline, all of those things, identifying those things, and having a way to get that data out in a usable format.
Hmm.
And then you have to start communicating it to employees. You need a comms plan. How are you going to roll this out? How long is it going to take? What are the potential impacts, good and bad? Believe me, you need to prepare for the employee comms because there will be someone in the audience that will come back with how it's going to be a negative. So you need to be prepared for those things.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We know about those squeaky wheels, don't we?
Yes. So prep work is going to be the thing that saves you.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think kind of like mapping those existing strengths and responsibilities and all of that is just, it's such a necessary part of upskilling because you want to be able to invest time, effort, energy, money in the right places, and also, identify, which people within your organization are going to rise to the occasion when you provide them with really what I would call an opportunity to
Yes.
expand your skill set. I mean, this is an opportunity for you to grow in your career, an opportunity for you to shift from one skill set, maybe gain some additional skills to be able to perform perhaps a similar job or an enhanced version of the job that you had, or perhaps even a totally different job. And so it is truly an opportunity. And those that see it as such are usually the ones that are self-motivated,
Hmm.
to really take what you're offering to them and really take it seriously. And so all of that kind of, it starts with mapping those existing strengths and responsibilities for sure. um,
Exactly. And doing a career ladder. Like what roles could conceivably lead into another role? Don't create a role that's a dead end job. If
right.
there is, an accounting clerk one and two, and then you go to accounting manager and you're a larger company, you've got a huge gap in the middle where people can't transition into those manager roles. So laddering those roles and also identifying ones that are somewhat parallel like HRIS to system admin. A lot of times you will see IT people go into HRIS and HR people go into HRIS. Rarely do you see HRIS people go into system admin, but it's possible, especially if IT is the owner and manager of the HRIS system. So those are somewhat lateral, and you wouldn't think that someone would come up through HR and then end up in IT.
Right.
So those are the kinds of things that you need to map out, and it's a big process,
Yeah.
but if you attack it systematically, you'll be able to see where you have not only gaps in skills, but also gaps in your ability to promote people.
Right. And in addition to these, the analyses that kind of goes into figuring out what the game plan is going to be, then when you're actually in the situation of needing to put it into practice and to kind of, maybe it's piloting, maybe it's just moving forward with the game plan, it's determining how to minimize the disruption that comes with this, right? There
Mhm.
still needs, the day-to-day work still needs to be done while someone is learning a new skill, or becoming more skilled in certain areas. And so, I think some of this, this transition, the disruption can really be minimized by kind of maybe performing some sort of pilot or project based work alongside regular roles, right? So if I'm
Absolutely.
if I am in the HR on the HRIS team, and I'm going to be learning some new skills so that I can also do some roles within the IT team, I still need to do my daily job, but maybe I have a project of, my project is to learn this skill, that skill, gain this certification, and shadow Tim in his work every day. It really, you kind of have to set the stage that employees, you still have to do what we need you to do in the moment, but we also want to give you this opportunity to enhance your skills. And we're going to create almost like a project, so to speak, a special project that you're going to be a part of, so that we can still get the work done that's meaningful and important, but also give you the opportunity to learn and grow. So I think it again comes down to communication, right? And how you position it, how you communicate it to
Yes.
employees is going to be really helpful. Explaining the why behind the change, what's in it for them, having frequent feedback sessions, all of that's going to help to maintain productivity and reduce anxiety as changes kind of get
Management buy in, all of those things.
for sure. Absolutely. All right, let's move on here to another question here. What strategies have you found most effective in cultivating a culture of continuous learning and development? Because really, it comes down to that, right? Like, so this concept of upskilling and bringing this to your organization and finding ways to make this successful is really going to thrive in the right culture. So, what have you found to be most effective when you're trying to cultivate that type of culture that can support upskilling and ultimately support continuous learning?
Oh, for sure. And to go hand in hand with management buy-in is executive sponsorship. Find the executive, even if they're like not in HR. I did a career guide, career laddering project at Blue Origin, and our sponsor was the engineering VP. And there was a reason for that, because if he bought into it, then the engineers, who were the majority of the workforce, bought into it.
Yeah.
So it's not always your direct manager who needs to be the executive sponsor. Had buy-in from the learning and development group, and getting those subject matter experts to articulate what it is, that the skills that are needed for their roles, and they gain that buy-in, knowing that while I might have polished the apple a little bit on their writing, the core of the content was essentially theirs. So
Mm-hmm.
they are already buying in by you utilizing them for an area that you're probably not familiar with. So those are important things to utilize and also get people to continue to use them.
Right.
Part of our project plan was to incorporate it into the performance management system. So we made those career guides available at performance management time. And we encouraged the managers to go over that career ladder document with the person that was in that skill set so that they could see, oh, I didn't know there was a level 3 and I'm only a level 2. I thought this is just it. And, those are in line. There's things that are not necessarily considered inline. We already talked about some non-traditional lateral type things. So all of those things, framing it in communication and having those groups of subject matter experts, when there is a promotion request or a transfer request, and they want to know, well, what are the skill sets that this person needs to move into this job? If I couldn't answer it, okay, material engineering, not my strong suit. I knew the person who was identified as the SME, I could call him or Teams message him at any moment and say, hey, here's this person's resume. This is the job that they're looking at. You know, do they comply with the career guide? And he would say yay or nay. And
Mm-hmm.
that was something that helped them as well, in that they continued to be a part of this process. And I revised them as needed.
Right.
So those types of things, it was a continuous improvement process, and
Right.
it helped really with getting that continuous learning culture up off the ground and continuing to work through.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, even like that example, I mean, recognition is a great way to kind of, drive engagement and create a culture of continuous learning. I mean, I'm sure there were many times where you had reached out to that individual and they helped you tremendously, and you were
Yeah.
able to kind of, swing from the rafters and share how awesome it was to be able to have that type of partnership and be able to, reach out and quickly find out, if this person who you were interviewing was whether they're going to be a good fit or not. Um, you know, recognizing individuals and employees who are going above and beyond their daily responsibilities to contribute to culture, to contribute to the overall, goal of, creating an opportunity for not only people who are within the organization, but employees coming into the organization, that speaks volumes. So, if you're in an organization now where you have, employees who are, participating in ways to improve skills, improve skill set, be part of, the learning and development platform, focused on bringing good talent into the organization and keeping good talent, recognize them heavily. Recognition absolutely kind of drives culture forward. So that could be something like shout outs, or, some sort of learning champion spotlight of sorts,
Yeah,
kind of just inspiring motivation, and, really spotlighting those who are going above and beyond. I think too, like, just in some of the workforces that I have been in my past, sometimes there are a lot of folks who are afraid to make mistakes. And when they're afraid to make mistakes, they might be in a situation where they're afraid to take on new skills because they're worried, right? And they don't want to.
sure.
They're worried that they might lose their job, or they worry they might have a bad reputation, or they worry that they might not necessarily get along with a particular supervisor, or a supervisor might, think less of them if they make a few mistakes. I think another thing to kind of nurture that culture of continuous learning is really to make learning a safe space, right? So, because people improve through trial and error. So, we know that mistakes are going to happen when someone's learning something new. We know that mistakes are going to occur when someone might be doing their daily job, but also have this side project over here. Things might not necessarily go exactly the way you'd want it, but we're doing the best that we can. I think you kind of have to make, the learning process itself and the concept of upskilling, really a safe experience, a safe space for your employees who are kind of going through that. And, anytime that there's an opportunity to kind of highlight it in company communication or town halls, or, staff meetings, whatnot, really kind of providing that recognition and those accolades for those who are in the process of learning something new, and also kind of cheering them on when they've achieved that goal. These are all things that can kind of create that culture just organically, just through, word of mouth, and through congratulations, and through communication within the org. So those are things that cost you no money. Cheap, very cheap.
Absolutely. And building those relationships are priceless.
Yeah, for sure, because you never know when you're going to be interacting with that, that person again, right? Like, so, as you start to develop cross-functional partnerships, as you're learning and attaining new skills, they could be your peer someday, they could be your boss someday, especially if you decide to kind of move in that direction of that new skill that you've learned. So, a lot of opportunity to kind of nurture that culture of continuous learning. All right. Can you share some examples of how cross-functional teams and flexible work models have contributed to greater organizational agility? I know that's kind of a mouthful, but really kind of looking at, how, what are some, like, solid examples here that we can maybe share with our participants in the audience to really kind of add some color to really what we're talking about today.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of an add-on to what we were just talking about with the career guides and ladders and talent guides, whatever you want to call them. Um, we had a big cross-functional team. We had the VP of engineering identify a subject matter expert in every big area of engineering. And we expanded the protocol from one generic engineering career guide or ladder guide to, I think, 16. Now, there aren't 16 major areas of engineering, but you've got your bigs, the usually five or six, most people agree on: mechanical, electrical, civil, chemical, and industrial and manufacturing are becoming that fifth one. And biomedical's somewhere in there, and so is systems. So that's where you start getting all those branches and the crossover. What that cross-functional team allowed me to do not only was to identify those subject matter experts on the biggies, the big engineering, but it also gave me that insight on some of those that cross over. And like, for instance, avionics crosses over mechanical and electrical, and systems crosses over mechanical, electrical, and computer science. So having those cross-functional teams, sometimes getting them together, sometimes it was just email, hey, can you answer this question? That was the impetus of the program for the whole company. And then I took those lessons learned, applied it to the rest of the company, like finance and HR and legal and all of those things. where I already had that beta test was already done. It was tried and true. And the rest of the company went so much faster. Like it took a year to do the engineering, but it took 6 months to do the rest of the company.
Yeah.
So if you document your processes and you keep those people talking and in, uh, little like teams groups,
Yeah.
that's a way to keep those cross-functional groups going. And then we took that and took the next step. Okay, how do we communicate it? Okay, how do we then impart it in performance management? How can TA use that?
Mm.
In the hiring process. So keeping it moving and having those projects that lead into the next one
Yeah.
will definitely keep it fresh in everybody's minds.
Awesome. Yeah. Um, a few examples that come to mind for me, I'm thinking mainly in the lines of like, flexible models, right? So, I have previously worked at a couple of, retail organizations, and in apparel retail, there is a lot of rotating assignments.
Mm.
And rotating assignments, really helps to strengthen the overall skill set, within, certain roles within an organization. So, for example, those who were involved in, buyers, right, the sourcing process, and those who are planning and allocating what goes to each store, more of a fulfillment process. If you're in a rotating assignment where you get to rotate through all, 3 to 4 of those types of roles within sourcing and fulfillment, you get that full picture of the importance of your work and how it affects those who are downstream and those who are
Oh,
in
for sure.
departments. And that just, quite frankly, allows for, quicker responses to change, or, innovation, new ideas, breaking down silos, accelerating, different types of projects or thought processes. It really allows for speed, within the process. If I'm someone who has done those rotating assignments, and I'm now, my core role is I'm a buyer, I know that I need to ensure that I'm buying, the right product at the right time, at the right quantity, in order for, my planning and allocation partner to be able to do their
Right.
job effectively. And both of us are getting measured on how much of that product is moving in the store. So, when you have an opportunity, when you see, as an HR professional, the opportunity to create, some cross training, but ultimately, these moments of upskilling, that really is going to be the precursor for speed, and innovation. And a lot of it comes just simply from empowering people to, really own a process and see the flaws and improve those flaws. And over time, you end up with such a cohesive team because everyone fully understands what the other is going through and fully understands the impact of their own actions on the others that are directly impacted by them. So it's, flexible models, I think, are, they don't always work, right? They're not always, perfect or the right, model for every role out there or every department out there. But when you can kind of impart those, into the mix to really kind of create, more of an agile workforce, it really does, it really does make a huge difference. And it really does lead to some pretty significant, data driven outcomes. So true data impact that you can put in front of executive leaders to show, hey, here's an example, that we've done before. It's a, technically an upskilling example, and we want to show how this has worked well in the past, and this is something we want to replicate in other areas. So, anytime that you can create, the opportunity for some of that hard and fast data that, of course, executives want to see in order to make decisions to keep moving forward or expand the program, that's always super ideal. So that's, an example that comes to my mind there.
Oh, for sure. And auditing other people's processes that are in similar functions can help you with that. I did a project once at a government contractor where we became a um, workforce resource planning office. So
Mm-hmm.
I took a recruiter and a payroll person, and I was the HR person, and the three of us, we audited all three processes. And then we reduced the errors by a huge number. I don't remember the percentage now, but
Yeah.
it made everybody else's life easier when everybody understood like what your downstream
Right.
effects are, like what you were talking about.
Yeah, it makes, I mean, it really does enlighten a lot of folks. And it also, I think it, it gives them, it empowers them to do a better job because they
Hmm.
realize if I
Right,
do this wrong, that's going to affect Sally. If I do
right.
this right, that's going
Yes.
to affect all 10 of my colleagues and make their job that much easier. So, just awareness sometimes it's not anyone maliciously doing something or not doing something. It's ultimately just not being aware of exactly how your role impacts others. That can make a huge difference. Just letting people know. All right, we've got a couple more questions that I wanted, for Rochelle and I to discuss, but we've got about 10 minutes before Q&A time. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. I always forget if chat is fully functional or not, but I know our Q&A is. So if you have any questions, go ahead and throw those questions in there. In about 10 minutes, we will go ahead and start the Q&A and answer some of your questions, as well as some questions that we received during the registration process as well from some participants. So moving along here, how can digital tools and learning platforms be leveraged to personalize upskilling journeys for employees at different career stages? Because, personalization is something that is super key, right? We personalize total rewards packages, we personalize onboarding processes, we personalize career paths. How can we leverage digital tools and learning platforms in a similar way to really kind of improve that upskilling experience?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So creating a cross-functional team in all the functional areas of HR is probably your first step. uh, Being able to impart, because we did a data feed from the HRIS system into the learning management system, and from the learning management system into the operations system. So getting those things aligned, everybody using the same labels, everybody using the same data points, everybody reporting the same data, you're able to utilize the content that you're collecting in your HRIS. Some HRISs have their own skills banks
Mm-hmm.
that can inform training and development on what training they should be assigned. That could also inform the recruiters on who could potentially be ready for an internal role, whether it's a promotion, a lateral, filling a gap, or preventing someone from having to be riffed. So,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things lead into utilizing the systems that you have, ensuring that everybody's mapped their data correctly, everybody's using the same data from data analytics products to your HRIS system, learning management payroll, even expense reports systems. All of those digital systems are in ticket systems. That was the last one that we added before I left. Uh, Utilizing those workflows and ensuring that everybody crosstalks will ensure that those digital tools actually can be utilized to their biggest advantage. The one thing that always comes up every time we've talked about this is there are pieces and parts of products that your company may already be paying for, but at the time when it was implemented, either someone didn't know it could or should be turned on, or there was a decision that was made to delay the implementation of it. And maybe that person that made that decision left. Always inspect the programs that you currently own for what other modules they have or have added on since you've taken them as a system, and utilize the systems that are built in as much as possible. Take it as delivered as possible. Take it as hosted as possible. All of those things will feed into the other systems a lot cleaner. And when they do upgrades and updates, your connections won't break.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think too, when we think about leveraging data and digital tools, and really trying to create more of a personalized experience, I think that the best way to kind of think that process through is to develop personas, right? I mean, we develop personas as HR professionals all of the time to really kind of identify who are our learners, right?
Hmm.
And so you might be able to kind of implement some leadership modules for maybe for new managers, maybe even some of your more seasoned executives, or seasoned, like, skilled professionals within your organization. Maybe there's some additional advanced challenges or courses that you could kind of put in front of them to kind of keep them engaged, in some sort of learning and development opportunity. One of the places that I previously worked for, I'm going to forget what the name of it, what they called it, but I'm going to call it almost like a career passport, where
Oh,
you kind of had like almost like a get your stamp and everything. Like, when you go on like a scavenger hunt at like a fair or a festival or something, and you have to visit each booth in order, collect all your stamps in order to get the big prize, right? So it was almost like this internal like career passport, where you kind of, based upon you as an employee and your learning style and your personality, and your work style, as well as the job title that you were in, based on those two things, you were matched with certain types of learning paths and certain
sure.
mentors that might be very much aligned to your background or to where you're headed or what your aspirations might be. So it's kind of a combination of who I am, through some of the assessment tools that I've taken, as well as the role that I'm currently in. And then this passport, I might have 14 challenges to complete by the end of the year, and they all involved enhancing my skills or sharpening my skills or getting to know another member of the organization who can share information with me, that would make my skill set sharper, and my value even greater than it already was, because I was able to see the forest through the trees, talking with different folks, and maybe learning how to do this particular system versus that. On my passport, one of my, I was in HR, right? But in the store operations team, I had to learn the POS system.
Uh-huh.
Wouldn't be something you would think that an HR person would learn. But sure enough, just by using the POS system, getting to know that system, learning that system, I really was able to kind of identify some areas of issue and concern with some of our HR processes that really impacted employees' abilities to actually learn the POS system. Because when you come in as a new employee, there are certain onboarding timelines, and we were expecting too much of them on the HR side when they were trying to learn this foreign POS system that they hadn't used before. So just by getting acquainted with some areas of the organization, I was able to improve my ability to add value in what I had control over. And so I think it's a great way to kind of personalize some digital tools, is to kind of create opportunities where employees can have the chance to get their hands on some of those tools,
Yeah,
and then ultimately, from an upskilling perspective, be able to kind of build, whether it be a platform that you're not leveraging today, but you could be because you have access to it, but it was never put together, or maybe it's something that you create, from scratch, or even some sort of grassroots initiative. All of it, can move you forward, and really help to personalize the experience.
for sure. And utilizing those individual learning plans gives you and your manager opportunities to check in a lot more often and on a positive note.
For sure. All right, this will be our last question before we go to Q&A. This one here, so what are some common obstacles that organizations encounter when implementing large-scale upskilling initiatives, and how can they be overcome? So this question is kind of a loaded question, because I think, as we know, there's a lot of fits and starts when it comes to
Mhm.
implementing some large-scale initiatives. Period, regardless of what they are. So, what's your take, Rochelle, on what are some of those common obstacles, and how can those be overcome?
So I found the biggest obstacles and I'll start with the digital side, is not talking to IT first. Um, yeah. So if you are thinking that you need a new digital system or implement or upgrade or whatever, the system that you have or add a system, the first thing they're going to ask is what are the security protocols? So getting them involved first and getting them on your side will make the transition so much smoother. Because if you don't, then they will make your life miserable. Rightly so sometimes, trust me. So in the framing and the executive sponsorship that we've already talked about, but framing it for the benefits of what it's not only going to bring to the workforce, but also to the employer, and connect those to business objectives. You have to show basically not only what's in it for the employee, but also what's in it for the executive team and the
Right.
company itself and the bottom line. Not everything is going to have a dollar sign attached to it, but you can make some inferences that will give you enough data to, even if you're just documenting what our current state is and what your desired state is, and having those projects be at least have somebody or a committee that is looking at the big picture. You don't want to be thinking that you're going to set up a new learning management system when the training department, which in your company is under ops, was also doing the same thing, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So technology committees are really great for that so that everybody can talk about how their stuff connects. Does the HRIS push in nicely into the new uh, um, accounting system for timesheets to be set up? All of those things. So having those conversations, preempting some of the problems that you may have seen in the past is your best way. But those obstacles, when they do come up, then they're a one-off, not
Right.
an obstacle that's happening every time you turn around.
Yeah.
So identify your stakeholders, identify what potential obstacles you might have, identify are those downstream receivers of that information. Also identify who's pushing information into you. Does your company add people into Active Directory first before it gets pushed into the HRIS? You have to figure out what those workflows are and map those out so that you can preempt those obstacles. So that's my best advice, is to figure out what those obstacles could and should be
Yeah.
and preempt them.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. And I think too, gathering frequent feedback as much as possible
Mm-hmm.
is also going to, make a huge difference. As well as being able, like you said, Rochelle, to really kind of put as many things that can be quantified and kind of measured, as many metrics as you can put together. I mean, that's ultimately what executives are going to respond to, right? So if you need additional dollars to invest in upskilling, maybe it's to enhance, a digital tool that you're looking into, or maybe it's to more broadly scale it across an organization, or to go deeper, into an organization. I really think that, creating almost like a dashboard of metrics that's kind of helpful to be measuring as you
Yeah.
go. Of course, it's not necessarily always going to point to, a comprehensive ROI, but just knowing, okay, we're looking at, upskilling, these 16 positions, and it's resulting in, a productivity increase of, X%, and the turnover within those, 16 positions is now improved by, 27%, or, whatever that might look like. I think measuring as much as you can and putting it in front of executives as often as you can, and also, gaining that, gathering that feedback and tweaking your process and your strategy based on the feedback. Those are things that are naturally going to help you kind of avoid, some pushback, maybe kind of get ahead of some of the barriers that might be, potentially
Yes.
coming, and also can really help to show that, this is an initiative worth having, and worth proceeding with. All right. Well, that's all the questions we have for now. However, I am going to just kind of summarize some of our key takeaways today, and then we'll open the floor up for some Q&A. So let me just share my screen again, just to go over some of the takeaways, that we discussed here. So, really, we've got three takeaways for you. Closing those critical skill gaps with data-driven insights is really going to, kind of help you take upskilling and to the next level, no pun intended, and to really leverage digital tools and learning platforms to personalize that upskilling journey. And this will ultimately help you, build a culture of continuous improvement and growth. And when all three of these are in harmony, you're going to be able to get ahead of the curve, get ahead of some of these technological advances that are accelerating at a rapid rate. And so as HR professionals, it's our job to prepare the workforce for change and to think ahead about how we can provide employees with an opportunity to gain more skills, to continue to be valued and valuable to the organization in which they work. All right. And then after the webinar, you are going to receive a session recording. We're also going to provide you access to download an upskilling checklist. So a lot of the things that we covered today, as well as some additional insights and tidbits, will be available to you for download. We will be sending an email to all of our registrants with that information, the recording, as well as the link to the download. And if you have any questions about anything that we've discussed today or anything that you see in the checklist, we would be happy to speak with you further. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. I am going to show some contact information in a couple of minutes here after we go over a couple of questions. We did have some questions that came in when we had some registrations. And so I think we'll highlight those at the moment. Let's see here. So one of those questions was, how do you ensure that upskilling efforts align with the broader organizational goals and deliver measurable business impact? So great question. Rochelle, do you want to kick things off there? Would you like me to kind of dive in?
So I'll start, but jump right in whenever you feel. So how do you get ahead of that and ensure that it aligns with the business needs? That is not always easy uh, because you have to keep up with where the business is going as well as where the people are going. In HR, we wear many hats, and understanding where the business is going, what business they're looking at, means creating those or building those relationships with the legal team, the logistics team, the supply chain. Are we looking at acquisitions? Are we looking at a different skill set? One of the biggest examples that I have is the change in welding concepts from regular TIG and MIG welding to a whole new kind of welding that was done, and it's computer based. So it's kind of like when you went from a CNC machine or from a lathe to like CNC. So it went from a very manual process to a digital process. That's a huge area for upskilling. Yeah. And getting those people not only that have those skills, especially when it's new, it's hard, there's not classes available, but also reaching out to the local community college and vocational schools to see if they can provide that training, or do a joint effort where you either upskill your current employees or train new employees coming into those roles when the technology changes. So you have to keep abreast of technology. Right. So those are the first ways that I would start that conversation is, what is the business looking to do in the next 5 years? Is it acquisitions? Is it mergers? Is it a new line of business? That type of thing. And that will give you your first direction into what skills you're going to be needing. And then you're back to an analysis of your current workforce. Do you have those skills? Do you have people that have the aptitude for those skills? And go from there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I would also add too, if some of the business outcomes, if the goals that are in place for the organization, and the outcomes that are tied to that are things like speed, right? Faster sales cycles, for example, or maybe it's even improved retention. Once you kind of identify what the outcomes are of the goals that are currently in place, you can take a look into seeing, can we through upskilling also result in those, can we align with those outcomes? Because it might not necessarily, the goal itself might not necessarily lend itself the direct connection, but the outcome could. So for example, if there is a, business organizational goal in place to, increase revenue by 13%, the one of the outcomes of that goal is going to be, in order to do that, we ultimately need to move faster, right? So if the outcome is going to be, okay, in order to do 13% more revenue, we need faster sales cycles. Maybe there is some work that you can be doing as an HR professional from an upskilling perspective that can help provide additional skill set, or even look at folks within the existing sales organization to see, can we put more bodies towards that revenue goal, that and increasing the speed of the cycle. So I think sometimes it's distinguishing the difference between what the goal and what the outcome is, which ultimately I think is going to result in plenty of success. But being able to tie it together and make that linkage and show that alignment to an executive is going to make your upskilling proposition that much more powerful, because, oh, okay, cool, they want to do something that's ultimately going to make my goal come to fruition, or at least lay the foundation for us to be successful. It's not just a learning for learning's sake situation, which I've heard multiple executives say in my career of, do we really need to do that? Is that really worth the money? I mean, are we just teaching them to learning for learning's sake? Always hated that that phrase. We have a question in the Q&A. Will the session recording be made available? Yes, it will. It will be made available to you. It will be, the link will be sent to you probably within the next day or two. You'll have the link in your inbox, and feel free to share it with others if you would like. We've got about 3 minutes left. So despite the fact we only got through one question, I am going to kind of close things out today. That way you can get the activity ID for today's session. So your SHRM PDC activity ID code is listed here on the left-hand side of the screen. Our contact information is also here. Feel free to visit us on our website at nlbenefits.com. You can email us. You can follow us on LinkedIn. You can check out our YouTube page. Any and all of these things, feel free. Also, Rochelle and I are available for, any sort of question that you may have as it relates to any sort of HR projects that you might need assistance with. We're also available if you want to, have some conversation around upskilling, even if it's a, 15 to 20 minute conversation, happy to have it with you, happy to make the time. And we do hope that you join us for one of our upcoming webinars. Trying to do as many as we can this year. We'll probably do another one here in September, so stay tuned and hopefully you'll join us. And Rochelle, thank you so much for your time today. We
Thank you.
really appreciate your insights, such wonderful examples that you provided today, and always I'm always super jazzed and excited when you share information about what it's like at Blue Origin.
Yes.
I've always, who knows what's going on over there, and so all sorts of crazy, unique and innovative things. So anything
sure.
we can take from those examples and kind of mold and shape them into our worlds today, and improve the lives of employees, I'm sure we're all excited to do it. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on our next webinar. Thanks, everyone.